Anne Boleyn, a martyr, a schemer, a victim, an adulteress. To many, she was the devil who bewitched Henry VIII and led England away from the old faith. Her sister, Mary, barely features in the story. When she does, she's a shadowy figure, a foil to Anne. Two sisters, not close, not enemies, but caught in the orbit of a man who could have anything. This is a story of ambition and power, of lust and obsession, of a king and two sisters who paid the price. Anne and Mary Boleyn were probably born around the year 1500. Their exact birth year is still debated, and even their precise birthplace is not definitively known, but the place that shaped their childhood was Hever Castle in Kent. There, the two sisters grew up from 1505 onwards. Their father, Thomas Boleyn, a courtier, a diplomat, a career man. Their mother, Elizabeth Howard. She carried with her the weight of one of England's most powerful families. And one thing was very important. The Boleyn sisters received a far more comprehensive education than many girls of their time. Not just finishing school, but real preparation for court life and power. Around 1513, Anne Boleyn was sent abroad to the court of Margaret of Austria in Mechelen, in Habsburg, Netherlands. This court was considered one of the most civilized in Europe, a school for young noble women, teaching languages, music, manners, and general knowledge. While Anne was educated here, her sister, Mary, remained in England. Mary probably longed to grow up at one of Europe's great courts, but she did not get that chance. Mary was considered the more domestic of the two sisters, less striking, less intelligent, and perhaps less prepared for the machinations of court life. Anne, on the other hand, showed early on that she was at home in this world, that she observed, learned, and didn't shy away from the power games, but rather understood them. It would have been understandable if Mary had felt resentment toward her younger sister,
who was being promoted while she herself remained in the background. But the sisters were neither hostile nor affectionate toward each other. In 1514, Anne Boleyn and her sister Mary traveled together to France. They were part of the entourage of the English princess Mary Tudor, who married the French king Louis XII. After the king's early death, the English court came to an end. Mary returned to England no later than 1515. Anne remained in France. She entered the service of the new queen and stayed for many years. Here, the qualities that would later define Anne took shape. French elegance, a confident demeanor, a keen eye for power, and a fine sense for court intrigue. Anne observed closely. She saw how women could exert influence. She experienced the court as a stage and learned how to navigate it. Mary's path was different. While Anne penetrated the inner circle of the court, Mary remained on the periphery. Anne understood the rules of this system. Mary felt less secure within them. While Anne Boleyn remained in France, her sister Mary returned to England. She entered the service of Catherine of Aragon as a lady-in-waiting to the queen. Thus, Mary was constantly present, within sight of the king, and dependent on the daily life of the court. Here she met Henry VIII. Sometime around 1519, Mary became his mistress. In 1522, relations between England and France deteriorated. Anne was recalled to England, to the Tudor court, and once again, she overshadowed her older sister. At this point, Mary was still the king's mistress, but at court, she received little attention. Anne was different. She stood out because of her years in France, her education, her bearing, and her confident demeanor. She brought something that was scarce at the English court: French elegance and intellectual acuity. The exact date when Henry ended his relationship with Mary is unknown. What is certain is that the affair was over by 1526 at the latest, because the king had found a new love. He openly courted Anne with gifts, visits, and passionate love letters. The king was not merely interested, he was obsessed. He wanted to make Anne his mistress, just as her sister had been. But Anne refused. She keeps the king at a distance, deliberately, consistently. She retreats to the family seat, Hever Castle. There she remains for an extended period. Anne has seen what became of Mary: closeness without security, importance without protection. Anne does not let her heart rule her head. She acts deliberately. While the king courts Nerlin, his personal crisis intensifies. His marriage to Catherine of Aragon has lasted 20 years. For a long time, it was stable and happy, but it has produced only one surviving child, Maria Tudor, a daughter. The desire for a son haunts Henry. He needs a male heir for the dynasty, for the future of his house, and he begins to interpret his childlessness religiously. Catherine had been married to Henry's brother, Arthur Tudor. She maintains until the very end that this marriage was never consummated. Henry, don't you believe her? For him, it is clear. If Catherine's marriage to Henry's deceased brother Arthur had been consummated, he should never have married Catherine. Then his own marriage would have been sinful and invalid from the outset. God himself, he believes, is therefore denying him a son. This would have consequences, not only for Catherine, but also for her daughter Mary. She would be excluded from the line of succession. Henry appealed to the Pope, demanding the annulment of his marriage, but Rome hesitated. Pope Clement VI was under immense political pressure. Catherine was the aunt of the most powerful ruler in Europe, Charles V. A year away from Rome would trigger a political conflict. Years passed without a decision, without a solution. And here Henry drew the line. Instead of yielding, he decided against Rome. He declared himself head of the church in England. The marriage to Catherine was declared invalid.
She lost the title of queen, her daughter her place in the line of succession, and Anne took the place Catherine had held for decades. One thing is certain, had Catherine given birth to a living son, none of this would have happened. But Henry did not give up. He was determined to have her. In 1531, the king finally saw his wife, Catherine of Aragon, leave the court. He would never see her again. 2 years later, Henry and Anne married secretly, away from the public eye, with only a few witnesses. The exact date is uncertain. It is probably January 25th, 153. At this time, he is still formally married. The wedding is hasty, and there's a reason for it. Mary is already pregnant. Henry has divorced his former wife, Catherine of Aragon. He has broken with the Roman Catholic Church. He has turned large parts of the country against him. All for a son she is to bear him. It is her greatest triumph. The Boleyn family rises to become the most influential in the realm. The court belongs to them. Even Mary, still secluded at Hever Castle, benefits from her sister's rise. The victory seems complete. In 1533, the years of waiting end. Parliament passes laws that